They called him the Alpha King, a god among wolves. Until one night, he became the monster he'd sworn to destroy. No priest, no warrior, no spell could break his curse. For years, he howled beneath the moon, forgotten, feared, lost. But when a wolfless Omega was sent to die in his cage, she didn't scream. She touched him, and that single touch changed everything. The air inside the slave vault was thick with the scent of wet iron and despair. Torches guttered against damp stone, and the sound of chains rattling echoed like the heartbeat of some great buried beast. Beneath their flickering light stood a line of Omegas, thin, trembling, their eyes cast downward. Each was a life reduced to a price. Among them, Lyra of the Hollow Moons kept her head bowed. The coarse linen shift scratched her skin, but she made no sound. Her wrists were bound in iron cuffs, though she posed no threat. Even among Omegas, she was an outcast, a silent one. No wolf stirred in her blood, no inner voice whispered beneath her skin. The packs called her Hollowborn, a soulless creature, proof of the gods' cruelty. Her family had sold her to the traders in the depths of winter. Once noble, the Hollow Moon clan had fallen into disgrace after years of failed alliances and bad harvests. Lyra had been their last burden. Her mother couldn't even look at her when they handed her to the auctioneer. The crowd gathered in the vault was small and grim, merchants, gamblers, and petty lords searching for cheap amusement. The auctioneer, a tall man with teeth like yellow coins, raised a staff. "Lot 31, he called. "Lyra of the Hollow Moons. Wolfless, barren, and branded. But the face, aye, she's a pretty one. We'll start the bid at half a silver." A murmur of laughter rippled through the crowd. Half a silver. Less than the cost of a horse's shoe. Lyra closed her eyes. She had expected this humiliation. The world had no use for a wolfless Omega. Her gift, if it could be called one, was invisible and unwanted. She could feel pain. Not her own, but that of others. She could soothe an injured animal, calm a crying child, even ease the dying breath of the old. But to a kingdom ruled by alphas and their wars, gentleness was useless. Half a silver? No one, the auctioneer barked.
Fine.
A copper, then. Surely someone wants a servant who doesn't talk back. No hands rose. The auctioneer sighed and reached for his mallet. Very well. To the tanner's pit she goes. The goddess takes back what? The heavy iron doors slammed open. A wave of cold air rolled into the vault, scattering the torchlight. Two soldiers stepped through, their armor black and marked with the sigil of a crowned wolf. Between them strode a tall man wrapped in sable robes, the royal chancellor, Lord Valor. His reputation had long preceded him, the regent who ruled while the king languished in his cursed tower. His expression was carved from stone. He surveyed the chained Omegas like one might inspect livestock. "By decree of the regent," he announced, his voice slicing through the noise, "a tribute of healing is required. The Alpha King's affliction worsens. None of the priestesses or mages have succeeded. The council decrees that an Omega shall attend him to calm his beast." The vault went deathly still. Everyone knew the story. The Alpha King Kaelrin, once the fiercest warrior of the northern packs, had been struck down in the war against the Witchborn and resurrected by forbidden magic. But he had returned wrong. His wolf was twisted, feral, unbound, blackened by shadow. Those who approached him met violent ends. Dozens of Omegas had already been sent to the Cursed Tower. None returned. Lord Valor's sharp eyes swept the line until they stopped on Lyra. "That one." The auctioneer stammered. "And my lord, she's wolfless, useless. Her family sold her for a pittance." "All the better," Valor replied coldly. "If she fails, we lose nothing. If she succeeds," his thin lips curved, "then we have found a miracle." He tossed a single gold coin to the stage. It landed with a metallic ring beside Lyra's bare feet. "Prepare her," he said, already turning to leave. "The king requires his tribute before nightfall." Two soldiers seized Lyra by the arms. For the first time, fear clawed through her numbness. The tales of the king's curse were legend. His roars shaking the citadel at midnight, the walls dripping with black shadow. As they dragged her toward the waiting carriage, she looked back. None of the other Omegas met her gaze. To them, she was already dead. Outside, the wind howled across the frozen spires of Blackmere Citadel, where the cursed Alpha waited. The journey to the citadel took half a night. The carriage rattled over frozen ground, the wheels crunching through patches of ice. Lyra sat between two silent guards, her thin fingers twisting the hem of her shift. Through the barred window, the world was black and endless. When the fortress came into view, her breath caught. Blackmere loomed like a wound in the sky. Its towers pierced the clouds, their jagged edges lit by the pale glow of witchfire. The banners hanging from the walls were tattered, their wolf sigils almost unrecognizable. The curse had seeped into the stone itself. Each block seemed to weep with shadow. Inside, silence reigned. The corridors were wide and empty, the torches burning with eerie blue flames. The guards led her through hall after hall, past rooms filled with relics of a kingdom that once sang with life. Now, even the air felt hollow. At last, they reached a stairwell spiraling upward into the dark. The higher they climbed, the colder it became. Lyra's breath fogged the air, her bare feet numb against the icy steps. At the top stood a massive door of blackened iron, sealed with 7 locks and chains thicker than her wrist. The sigil of the royal line, a crowned wolf encircled by thorns, was carved deep into its surface. One guard hesitated before unlocking the door. "Don't touch him," he muttered. "Don't speak unless he does." And the walls bore deep claw marks that looked more beast than man. In the center of it all knelt King Caelrin, bound by chains of silver and rune-forged steel. He was enormous. Even bowed, his presence filled the room. His hair hung in tangled black waves, his bare back slick with sweat. Veins of shadow pulsed beneath his pale skin, crawling like living ink. He didn't look up when he spoke. Another one. His voice was rough, low, like thunder strangled by grief. "You should run, girl. My uncle grows desperate." Lyra swallowed hard. "I have nowhere to run, my king." That made him raise his head. His face was a mixture of savage beauty and ruin. One eye gleamed silver, clear and intelligent, the eye of a ruler. The other burned crimson, swirling with an unholy light. The curse had taken half of him, and it was winning. "You're not afraid," he said slowly. The other screamed. "Fear doesn't save me," she whispered. "It never has." Something flickered across his face, not pity, but curiosity. "Wolfless," he murmured, tasting the word like a curse. "My uncle sends me a hollow soul to sue the Hollow King." How poetic. The chains around his wrists groaned as his muscles tightened. "Get away from me. The blight stirs." Lyra's empathy roared awake inside her. She could feel it, the raw, bleeding pain beneath his rage. It wasn't just darkness. It was suffering. He threw his head back, gasping. The shadows beneath his skin writhed. "Go," he growled. "Before it takes me." She should have fled. She should have begged the guards to lock the door again. But instead, she took one trembling step forward. "I can feel it," she whispered. "Your pain." That startled him. His silver eye widened. "What did you say?" "The curse," she said softly. "It's screaming, but not in anger, in fear." Caelrin's laughter was harsh, almost feral. "You think you understand this? You think pity can tame the beast?" "No," Lyra said. "But maybe understanding can." He stared at her. This fragile, wolfless creature daring to speak to him as if he were a man, not a monster. And for the first time in years, the Alpha King did not feel entirely alone. The guards shut the tower door behind her with the clatter of locks and chains. When the last bolt fell into place, silence settled, dense, alive. Only Caelrin's uneven breathing disturbed it. Lyra stood motionless. Her instincts told her that a single wrong word might shatter the fragile calm. She could feel the pressure of his magic, heavy as a storm pressing against her skin. Beneath it lurked agony, a deep, gnawing torment that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He shifted, the chains scraping the floor. "You will die if you stay," he said. "My wolf is poisoned. It kills anything that comes too close." Lyra's throat was dry. "Then why are you still fighting it?" That made him look at her again. The silver of his left eye was steady. The crimson of the right flared like molten glass. "Because I remember what it was to be a man," he said after a long pause. "And because my people still kneel and hope that their king might return." He gave a bitter smile. "A fool's hope." Lyra took a small step closer. The air smelled faintly of iron and pine resin. "Hope isn't foolish," she said. "It's just painful." He huffed a breath that might have been laughter. "You speak as if you know pain." "I do," she said simply. "I was born hollow." Something in her tone cut through the wall he had built around himself. His gaze flickered downward, studying the small scars on her wrists, evidence of chains older than these. "And yet you stand here." Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she moved to a broken chair and sat, folding her hands in her lap. "Tell me what it feels like," she said softly. "When it comes." Kael'ren's jaw tightened. "Like drowning in my own blood. Like my wolf is clawing from the inside, screaming for release. The chains don't hold it. They hold me." He flexed his bound hands, the links biting into his skin until tiny beads of dark blood welled up. Lyra's empathy flared. His pain crawled into her chest like icy smoke. She couldn't stop the tears that sprang to her eyes. "I can feel it," she whispered. He froze. "What did you say?" "I can feel your pain. It's raw, angry, but not evil." "You're lying." "I wish I were." She pressed a hand against her heart. "It hurts." For a long time, Kael'ren stared at her as though seeing something impossible. The crimson light behind his right eye dimmed, flickered. "No one has ever said that," he murmured. "Not the priests. Not the healers. They said it was madness." "Maybe it's grief," she offered. That word struck him like a physical blow. His body stiffened. The chains rattled violently. "Leave," he growled. "Now." But Lyra didn't move. "Who did you lose?" The growl deepened, reverberating through the stone floor. "Leave." Still she stayed. "If you can't speak it, the pain will rot you from the inside." A roar erupted from his throat, shaking dust from the ceiling. The shadows surged, racing up his arms like black fire. The ground trembled as the beast inside him pushed toward the surface. Lyra stumbled back, the cold wind of his power lashing against her. Then, through the chaos, she heard a sound that wasn't rage. It was a sob. It came from him. Without thinking, she crossed the space between them and knelt. "Kael'ren," she said, his name, not his title. "You are still here." He lifted his head, his eyes blazing red. "You fool," he snarled. "It's too late." His body convulsed. Bones cracked beneath his skin, his back arched in agony. The curse was dragging the wolf out of him. Shadows thickened, twisting into tendrils that clawed the air. The chains strained, sparking with silver light. Lyra's heart pounded. Every part of her screamed to run. Yet the empathic bond between them, fragile but real, told her there was still a sliver of the man inside. She moved closer until she could touch his shoulder. His flesh burned cold, but she kept her hand there. "You're not alone," she said, her voice shaking but sure. "Listen to me. Remember who you are." Kael'ren's roar turned into a strangled gasp. For a heartbeat, his monstrous outline shimmered, and then, slowly, the darkness receded. His body sagged forward, chained but human again. He knelt on the stones, panting, sweat glistening on his skin. Lyra withdrew her hand and sank to her knees, trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have." "You stopped it," he rasped. His gaze lifted, half disbelieving. "You stopped it." She shook her head. "It wasn't me. You did." "No," his breath shuddered. "You did something no one else has ever done." He looked at her as though seeing the world for the first time in years. "What are you, little hollow one?" "I don't know," she said honestly. but I think I'm meant to be here. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains, and the torches flickered. Deep within the fortress, a bell tolled, the signal that the curse had stirred again. But in the tower, for the first time in years, silence was not despair. It was peace. Days passed like shadows shifting over the citadel. Lyra was not dismissed. The guards, at Vaylor's command, brought food to the tower but refused to enter. None dared question why the wolfless Omega had survived the night. Her chamber adjoined Kael'ren's, a small cell with a cot, a basin, and a window overlooking the frozen forest. Each morning, she woke to the sound of chains clinking softly as he stirred. Each night she sat by the cold hearth, telling stories. At first, Kael'ren said nothing. He listened, eyes half closed, while she spoke of simple things: the scent of summer rain, the feel of sunlight on river stones, the laughter of market children. Slowly, the tremors of his curse eased. The shadows still coiled beneath his skin, but they no longer raged. On the 7th night, he finally spoke. "Why do you tell me these things? So, you remember what peace feels like." "Peace is a myth," he muttered. "Then, let's pretend." She smiled faintly, and he almost smiled back. The next morning he asked her name, though he had known it. The way he said it, Lyra, rolled through the air like a benediction. It warmed her chest. Later, as she brushed dust from the cracked mosaic floor, she asked, "Why do you keep the chains if the curse sleeps?" He glanced at the iron cuffs on his wrists. "Because I deserve them." "For what crime?" "For surviving when better men didn't." His tone ended the conversation. But that night, when the shadows flared again, she was ready. She didn't touch him this time. She only spoke softly, letting her voice weave through the darkness like thread through cloth. The beast subsided faster than before. When it was over, he whispered, "Your voice that feels like light." "And you think I'm hollow," she said with a shaky laugh. He didn't answer, but his gray eyes softened. "Perhaps you're the only one who isn't." Outside the tower, rumors began to spread, of the cursed king regaining strength, of a mysterious Omega who soothed his rage. Lord Vaylor heard them all and smiled a thin, venomous smile. The curse that had chained Kael'ren for years was weakening, and if it broke completely, so would Vaylor's power. He began to make plans. Inside the tower, unaware of the plots below, Lyra hummed as she cleaned the shattered remnants of the king's old throne. Kael'ren watched her quietly, feeling something he had forgotten long ago: the ache of hope. Lord Vaylor's private chambers were carved into the heart of the citadel, where sunlight never reached. The air smelled faintly of cold incense and paper ink. He stood before a mirror rimmed with runes, its surface alive with faint ripples. The reflection that stared back at him was not his own. A woman's face shimmered within the glass, a witch of the cinder reaches, her eyes black as pitch. "You said the curse could not be undone," Vaylor hissed. "It cannot," the witch replied smoothly. "Not by mortal hands. But the curse is built on balance. If your alpha finds peace, the darkness loses its anchor. Then it weakens because of her," Vaylor muttered. "That wolfless scrap, he calls his tribute." The witch's smile showed sharp teeth. "Empaths are rare. Their souls mirror what they touch. If she sees the man instead of the beast, she feeds light into the shadow. Remove her, and the curse will devour him again." Vaylor considered that, tracing a finger along the rim of the mirror. "She will not be easy to remove. The guards whisper that she calms him. If I harm her openly, it will raise suspicion. Then let the king do it for you," the witch purred. "Feed his curse until it hungers." The mirror darkened, leaving him alone with his thoughts. He poured himself wine and gazed out at the courtyard far below, where the few remaining soldiers drilled under a gray sky. Soon, he told himself, the kingdom had lived too long under the shadow of a chained monarch. Once Kael'ren was gone, once the beast claimed him fully, Vaylor would step into the power he already wielded from the shadows. In the tower above, the day passed quietly. Lyra brought Kael'ren food, though he hardly touched it. The room no longer reeked of decay. She had thrown open the shutters and let in pale light. Dust motes floated through the air, soft as drifting snow. Kaelrin watched her from his place near the fire. The guards say you hum when you work. I didn't realize they could hear. They can. His tone was neutral, but there was a faint amusement hiding in it. You sound like spring in this wretched place. Lyra felt a flush rise in her cheeks. It's just something my mother used to do. She said music keeps sorrow from nesting in your heart. He looked into the fire. Did it? No, she said softly. But I like to pretend. He turned toward her, something unreadable flickering across his face. Pretending takes strength. People think strength is claw and fang, but I think it's surviving your own mind. Lyra met his gaze, surprised by the confession. You speak like a poet. I speak like a prisoner, he corrected. But you make me remember what poetry feels like. Their eyes held, and for one perilous heartbeat, the world seemed to still. Then the floor shuddered, subtle, but unmistakable. The torches along the wall flared a sickly green before dimming. Lyra froze. The curse? Kaelrin's hands clenched around the arms of his chair. It's stirring. The shadows under his skin pulsed darker. Something's wrong. It shouldn't rise this fast. Lyra crossed the room. What can I do? He shook his head. Nothing. Get behind the barrier. Now. But she didn't move. The shadows snaked up his throat. His breath came ragged. Kaelrin, look at me. He tried to speak, but the beast inside him was stronger this time. His voice twisted into a growl. Get out. Lyra dropped to her knees in front of him, grabbing his hand. No. Listen. You can fight it. Her touch burned with empathy, waves of warmth pushing against the cold that poured from him. You told me you remember what it was to be a man. Hold on to that. For a second, she thought it wouldn't work. His eyes rolled back, his body trembling with strain. Then he inhaled sharply and collapsed forward, pressing his forehead against her shoulder, chains rattling. The shadows thinned. She held him until the tremors stopped. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. You risked everything. You're the king, she whispered. If you fall, they all fall. He lifted his head. You're trembling. So are you. A low chuckle escaped him, almost human. Perhaps I've met my match. Far below, Valor watched from the courtyard as black smoke leaked from a crack in the tower stones. It's feeding, he murmured. Perfect. But what he didn't see was the faint glow surrounding Lyra's hands as she studied the Alpha King's breathing, light threading through shadow, weaving something neither curse nor magic could undo. By the next dawn, the tower's mood had changed. The air was lighter, warmer. Kaelrin's chains lay slack, and the markings of shadow on his arms had faded to thin gray lines. Lyra woke to find him already watching her. You stayed through it, he said quietly. You could have died. I've already died once, she replied, stretching stiffly. Everything after that is a miracle. He frowned. What do you mean? She hesitated, then spoke. When my pack cast me out, they left me in the snow. I wandered until a passing caravan found me. I remember thinking, if death wants me, it can come. But it didn't. That's when I realized, if I'm still breathing, there's something I'm meant to do. Kaelrin regarded her for a long moment. Perhaps you were meant for this. Her heart beat faster. Curing your curse? No, he said, voice low, reminding me that I'm still alive. Silence settled, heavy with unsaid words. Later that day, the guards brought word from below. The regent would visit. Kaelrin's expression darkened. He never climbs this high unless he wants to see how tightly the leash still holds. Lyra sensed the tension in him as the locks were undone. Valor entered, flanked by soldiers. He wore an expression of practiced sorrow. My king, he said smoothly, bowing. You look stronger. How joyous to see progress. Kaelrin's gaze was ice. Progress is a dangerous word, uncle. It suggests change. Valor's smile didn't falter. Only improvement. And your companion? His eyes flicked to Lyra, assessing her like one might a tool. Remarkable that she has lasted this long. She has a name, Kaelrin said. Lyra.
Ah,
Valor clasped his hands. Lyra, then. You have my gratitude for easing His Majesty's suffering. Lyra bowed stiffly. I only speak to him. The rest he does himself. How humble. Valor's tone was sweet poison. Yet the priests failed, and you succeed. Fascinating. The court will be curious. Kaelrin stood, chains clinking. The court will stay out of my tower. Valor's smile slipped for the briefest moment before returning. Of course. We all wish for your peace. He turned to go, then added casually, Do take care, Majesty. Some lights burn so bright they draw the shadows back faster. When the door closed, Lyra exhaled. He doesn't like me. He doesn't like anyone he can't control, Kaelrin said. And you, Lyra of the Hollow Moons, are beyond his grasp. He reached out, taking her hand. The warmth of his palm banished the lingering chill from Valor's words. When this is over, he murmured, I will show you the sunrise from the southern cliffs. No shadows reach that high. She looked up at him, tears stinging her eyes. Then I'll hold you to that promise, my king. Outside, far below, Valor descended the stairs, his expression grim. His spies awaited in the shadows. Prepare the draft, he commanded. Tomorrow, the king drinks. The morning broke clear and brittle, sunlight glinting off the snow-capped towers. From Lyra's narrow window, the world seemed momentarily peaceful. She didn't trust it. Something in the air felt wrong, a stillness before a storm. Kaelrin had slept for only a few hours, his body still weary from the night's struggle. When he woke, he moved with new quiet strength, unshackled by the chains he once demanded. The curse marks on his skin had faded to faint silver scars. He looked almost human again, almost whole. Lyra set a tray on the table. Bread, broth, and a small crystal decanter of wine the guards had brought at dawn. They said it's a gift from Lord Valor, she explained. Kaelrin's gaze lingered on the decanter. Did they taste it?
no.
He reached for the bottle, turning it in the light. My uncle does not give gifts. He sets traps and calls them blessings. Lyra frowned. Then don't drink it. A hint of grim amusement touched his mouth. If I refuse, it will be taken as defiance. He will call me paranoid, unstable. He waits for excuses to declare me unfit to rule. Then pour it out, she said fiercely. He studied her, and for a heartbeat, she saw the soldier beneath the king, the man who had survived war by trusting his instincts. Slowly, he nodded and uncorked the bottle. A faint metallic scent rose, sweet and sharp. He poured a single drop onto the floor. The stone hissed and smoked. Wolf's bane, he said, masked by magic. Lyra's stomach turned. He means to kill you. Kaelrin's expression hardened. He means to finish what the curse began. Before they could speak further, the door burst open. A breathless guard stumbled inside. My king. Rebels down in the lower halls. They've breached the dungeons. Kaelrin's instincts flared. Rebels? He looked to Lyra. Stay here. She shook her head. It's a distraction. He realized she was right the moment pain lanced through his hand. He looked down. A hair-thin needle protruded from the rim of the wine cup he still held. The liquid had never needed to be swallowed. The poison had already found his blood. He dropped the goblet. It shattered into ruby shards. Kaelrin, Lyra reached for him, but the curse awoke first. The dark veins under his skin pulsed violently, crawling up his throat and across his face. He staggered, clutching his head. Get away, he gasped. No, she whispered, grabbing his wrist. I won't leave you. His eyes flared crimson, his voice deepened into a growl. Lyra, run. The chains that had once bound him, those he had left coiled on the floor, snapped upward as if alive, drawn by his power. The torches guttered out. Wind howled through the tower windows, carrying the scent of iron and ass. Then the beast erupted. It burst from him in a storm of shadow and bone, a thing with no true shape, part wolf, part nightmare. Its roar cracked the ceiling. The force hurled Lyra backward into the stone wall. She hit hard. The the world spinning. When her vision cleared, she saw the monster standing where Kael'ren had been. Its eyes burned like molten rubies, its body wreathed in writhing tendrils of smoke. The remnants of his crown still clung to its head like twisted iron. "Kael'ren," she whispered, rising to her knees. The beast turned toward her. For an instant, deep within the crimson blaze of its gaze, she thought she saw him. Terrified, trapped, but then the curse surged forward again, drowning him in rage. The door burst open. Valor stepped inside, flanked by his black-armored guards. His voice carried the perfect note of feigned horror. "Behold, the king is lost, the Omega, which has driven him mad." Lyra stared at him, realization dawning like a blade of ice. He wanted witnesses.
He wanted the story told his way.
"Arrest her," Valor commanded. "Destroy the creature before it escapes." The guards raised their spears, forming a semicircle around Lyra. But the beast moved first. It lunged with a roar that shook dust from the rafters. Spears splintered. Men screamed. In moments, the chamber was chaos, steel clashing, shadows tearing through flesh. Lyra ducked beneath a broken beam, heart hammering. "Kael'ren, please hear me." The beast froze, mid-lunge, head snapping toward her voice. "Listen," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "It's me, Lyra." The monster hesitated, chest heaving. Smoke coiled from its mouth like breath on winter air. Beneath the snarl, something human flickered. Valor saw it too. "Finish her," he roared. "If the witch dies, the curse will feed." The beast roared again, this time in defiance. It turned on Valor's men, scattering them like straw. Lyra could see it straining against itself, torn between destruction and protection. Then the impossible happened. A figure, translucent, half-formed, emerged from within the beast's mass. Kael'ren's spirit. He stepped forward, his body a shimmering echo of light and smoke, and planted himself between Lyra and the creature. "No more," his voice thundered, echoing through both worlds. The monster slammed into him. Light met shadow with a crack like thunder. He staggered but held firm. "You will not touch her." Lyra realized what he was doing, tearing his soul free to shield her. It was killing him. "No," she screamed, running to him. "You'll die." Kael'ren's ghostly eyes met hers. "Then let it be, for something real." The beast struck again, and Lyra did the only thing she could think of. She flung herself forward, past his fading spirit, straight into the heart of the darkness. The world went black. When awareness returned, she was standing in a void of swirling shadow. Before her loomed the beast, its eyes endless, its voice 1,000 whispers. "You cannot save him," it hissed inside her mind. "He is mine." Lyra trembled but lifted her chin. "Then you'll have to take me too." She stepped forward and pressed her lips to its muzzle, a kiss that was both surrender and war. Light erupted between them. Light tore through the void like dawn breaking across an endless night. Lyra's lips were still pressed to the beast's snout when the first surge hit. It was not heat, it was truth. Every emotion, every fragment of memory buried inside Kael'ren flooded into her. His first kill in battle, his mother's lullaby, the taste of blood and iron, the loneliness of command, and finally, the agony of waking from death with something black and snarling trapped inside him. It was too much. Her knees buckled, but she refused to let go. Her soul stretched, screaming under the weight of him, yet she anchored herself in the only thing she knew to be real: compassion. The darkness recoiled. The beast shrieked, its voice a hurricane of pain. Shadow claws tore at her spirit, but wherever they struck, light flared brighter. The empath's power, the one everyone had dismissed as useless, rose inside her like a sun. "You are not your curse," she whispered into the storm. "You are Kael'ren of Blackmere. You are my king." Her voice echoed through the void and struck something deep. The beast's massive form shuddered. Cracks of white light spidered across its body. Within them she saw flashes of him, the man chained for years, the warrior who had once protected an entire realm. His eyes, once crimson with fury, flickered silver again. Lyra? His voice came from everywhere and nowhere, fragile, uncertain. I'm here. She reached forward, her hands glowing. Come back to me. He appeared before her, half man, half shadow, kneeling in the storm. You shouldn't be here, he rasped. It'll consume you. Then it'll consume us both, she said fiercely, cupping his face. But we will not let it win. Their foreheads touched, and in that moment, light poured from her like an ocean unleashed. It rushed through the cracks in the beast's shell, flooding every corner of the curse. The darkness screamed as it burned, but its voice was losing power. Lyra felt her strength fading, her body trembling, but Kael'ren's hand, real now, warm, closed over hers. Together, he said. The world shattered. When she opened her eyes again, the void was gone. They were back in the tower. The walls were scorched black, the air heavy with ash. The beast had vanished. Kael'ren lay sprawled on the floor, naked and unmoving, the remnants of his chains scattered around him. Kael'ren? She crawled to him, shaking. His skin was pale, but no longer marred by shadow. The veins that had writhed like living ink were gone. Only faint scars remained, like the memory of lightning across a clear sky. He didn't breathe. No, she whispered, pressing her ear to his chest. Nothing. Desperation rose like fire in her throat. She leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. Don't you dare leave me now. For a heartbeat, the silence was absolute. Then one breath.
Slow.
Shallow.
Real.
He exhaled with a soft sound that might have been her name. Lyra let out a sob of relief, laughing and crying all at once. His eyes fluttered open. Not one silver and one crimson now, both a deep, stormy gray, alive with recognition. You, his voice was hoarse. You came into the darkness. I couldn't lose you, she said, voice breaking. I saw you there, alone. He reached up, fingers trembling, and brushed her cheek. I wasn't alone, he murmured. You were the light. Behind them, the heavy doors burst open. Guards spilled into the room, some loyal to Valor, others loyal to the crown. The scene froze them in place. The shattered tower, the unconscious men, the king reborn. Lord Valor appeared last, his composure cracking when he saw Kael'ren alive. Impossible, he breathed. The curse cannot die. Kael'ren turned his head toward him, slow and deliberate. It didn't die, he said. It was healed. Lyra rose beside him, her hand slipping into his. Golden light still shimmered faintly where their skin met. A mark, like molten sunlight, was forming just below her ear, spiraling into a delicate sigil, the mark of the Luna bond. Valor stumbled back. No, this cannot. You poisoned your own king, Kael'ren said, standing now, his voice calm and terrible. You called me monster, yet your greed was the true curse on this realm. The guards hesitated. Then one by one, they dropped their spears and knelt. The sound echoed like thunder in the wrecked chamber. Kael'ren's eyes never left Valor. Take him. The soldiers moved as if driven by fate. Valor's protests dissolved into shouts as they dragged him away. The tower door slammed shut, and silence returned, peaceful this time. Lyra sagged against Kael'ren's side, exhaustion crashing over her. It's really over, she whispered. He caught her before she fell, his arms strong around her. Not over, he said softly. Only beginning. They stayed like that for a long time, two souls who had walked through death and found each other on the other side. Outside, dawn broke over Blackmere for the first time in years without storm or shadow. Light poured through the broken windows, gilding the dust in gold. And in that light, Kael'ren bent his head and kissed her, not the desperate kiss of survival, but one of promise. I belong to you, he said, and you to me. The kingdom awoke to rumors that morning. Some swore they'd heard thunder in the night. Others whispered that light, pure, golden light, had poured from the cursed tower like sunrise breaking the mountain. By midday, those rumors became gospel. The Alpha King lived. The curse was broken. Caelrin stood before the council hall of Blackmere Citadel for the first time in years, dressed not in armor, but in a simple black tunic bound with a silver clasp. The court, nobles, generals, priests, filled the vast chamber, their eyes darting between him and the quiet figure at his side. Lyra wore a gown of pale ivory, her hair braided with wolf bone and gold thread. She kept her head bowed, though her presence silenced the room more than any royal decree could. Valar knelt at the foot of the dais, bound in irons, his once immaculate robes torn. Even now, he managed a defiant sneer. "You think they will follow a king who's been a beast?" he spat. "Or his witch?" Caelrin descended the steps slowly, his boots echoing against the marble floor. "You are wrong, uncle. They will follow the truth." He raised a hand, and the room fell to a hush. "For years, you told them I was beyond redemption, that I was unfit to rule. But I see now, the curse did not begin with the witch's spell. It began with your ambition, your hunger for control." He gestured toward Lyra. "And she is no witch. She is the proof that compassion is stronger than corruption. The curse broke not by blade or prayer, but by empathy and courage." Valar laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "You think love will rule a kingdom?" Caelrin's gray eyes hardened.
No.
"But it will heal it." At his nod, the guards hauled Valar to his feet. The man's defiance cracked at last as he was dragged from the hall to face trial. When the echo of his footsteps faded, Caelrin turned back to the court. "I will not ask for your loyalty," he said, his voice resonant and steady. "I will earn it again. The Age of Shadow is done. Blackmere will not fear its own strength, or its own softness, any longer." He extended his hand to Lyra. "Stand with me." A murmur rippled through the nobles. An Omega, wolfless, lowborn, standing beside the Alpha King? It was unheard of. But when she lifted her chin and took his hand, light shimmered briefly around their joined palms, the mark of the Luna bond glowing like dawn itself. The court bowed, one after another, until the entire hall was a sea of bent heads. The king and his chosen queen ascended the throne together. That night, Caelrin stood on the balcony of the restored tower. The chains that had once bound him now hung above the gates of the citadel, reforged into a massive iron arch bearing a single inscription, "From darkness, light." Lyra joined him, the cold wind tangling her hair. Below, the city glimmered with hundreds of lanterns, the people's celebration spreading like wildfire. "Do you ever think of what it was like before?" she asked quietly. "Every night," he said. "And every time I do, I promise myself never to forget." She rested her head against his shoulder. "The curse fed on isolation. But even now, I can feel something left in you, a remnant of that darkness." He smiled faintly. "And you can sense it because your heart mirrors mine." "I can still feel it, yes," she admitted. "But it doesn't frighten me. Light without shadow would be empty." He turned to her, his eyes soft. "Then we'll be both. You and I, oh light and shadow. Balance." They stood in silence for a time, watching the lights flicker across the city below. In the weeks that followed, change swept through Blackmere. The Wolf's Rest decree abolished the old ranking of wolves. No longer would Omegas be sold or discarded. Packs began to mix for the first time in living memory. Lyra visited the infirmaries daily, tending to soldiers wounded in the border wars. Her power, once dismissed as useless empathy, became legend. She could calm fever, draw nightmares from restless minds, even mend emotional wounds too deep for healers to touch. The people began to call her the Queen of Light and Shadow, for she never denied the darkness, only showed that it could be soothed. Caelrin watched her from afar when duty called him elsewhere. She had become the heart of his kingdom, the stillness that anchored his power. Sometimes he would find her by the new sanctuary gate, where the reforged chains glinted in the sunlight. She would trace her fingers along them, remembering the nights they once imprisoned him. "They're beautiful now," she told him once, "because they remind us that even what bound us can be turned into something that protects others." And you, he asked softly, what reminds you of freedom? She smiled and touched the mark on her neck, the golden swirl that shimmered faintly when he was near. This, she whispered. And you. He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. Then let me remind you again. Their lips met. No storm, no fire, only a deep, steady warmth that spoke of home. That night, the moon rose high above the citadel, no longer veiled by clouds. It bathed the fortress in silver, and for the first time since the curse began, Caelrin slept without dreams. Yet even in that peace, something ancient stirred, the faint echo of the curse, not malevolent, but waiting. For light and shadow, once joined, never truly separate, they simply learned to coexist. And in the quiet, Lyra smiled in her sleep, her hand resting on Caelrin's chest, feeling the heartbeat that once belonged to a monster, and now belonged to her. A full year had passed since the night the curse shattered. Spring had come early to Blackmere for the first time in decades. The mountains that once brooded over the capital now glittered with waterfalls, and the river that wound through the city ran clear instead of black. It was said that even the wolves that roamed the northern forests howled softer now, their songs no longer edged with despair. The citadel itself no longer wore its crown of thorns. The tower where Caelrin had once been chained was open to the sun, its ruined walls rebuilt into a vast balcony overlooking the valley. The air smelled of pine resin and smoke from the smiths who reforged weapons into tools, chains into gates, armor into art. King Caelrin stood there at dawn, his hands resting on the carved stone railing. Below him, the city was waking, the vendors in the square, the distant ring of the forge hammers, the laughter of children. For years, the Alpha King had heard nothing but his own roars. Now he listened to life. Footsteps approached softly. Lyra came into view, wrapped in a shawl of pale blue. Her hair caught the sunrise, turning gold. Her smile was still quiet, but her eyes, those gentle, steady eyes, carried the strength of every storm she had ever survived. "You're awake before the sun again," she murmured, joining him. "Does it still surprise you, seeing the world so peaceful?" He smiled. Every single morning. She leaned her elbows on the railing beside him. "It will stay that way, Cael." He looked at her with amusement. "When you call me that, I forget I'm supposed to be terrifying." "You never were," she said. "The curse just made you forget who you were." They walked down into the gardens, once an overgrown ruin, now blooming with white roses. At the center stood a new statue, not of the Alpha King in battle, but of the King and the Omega standing together, light and shadow entwined. Beneath it, carved into marble, was the creed that had become the heart of the new kingdom. Strength without compassion is tyranny. Compassion without strength is fragility. Together, they are balance. Children played beneath the statue, Omega, Alpha, Beta, without rank or fear. When they saw the king and queen, they bowed awkwardly, then ran back to their games. Lyra's laugh was soft. "They'll never know what the old world was like." "Good," Caelrin said. "Let them build something better." They walked in silence for a while until he caught her hand, resting it against her stomach. "And how fares our heir?" Lyra smiled, her fingers tightening over his. "Strong. Restless. He kicks every time you speak." "He'll be stubborn," Caelrin mused. "Like his mother. Or his father." He chuckled and kissed her temple. "Then we're doomed." Later that evening, the court gathered in the great hall to mark the anniversary of the curse's end. Candles filled every alcove, their flames reflecting on the new banners of the twin sigils, the crown wolf and the crescent moon. Caelrin stood before his people, his voice carrying easily across the hall. "1 year ago, we lived in darkness," he said. "We thought our monsters ruled us. But we learned that monsters are not always to be slain, they are to be understood. In facing them, we found ourselves." He turned toward Lyra, who watched from the dais, the glow of candlelight soft on her face. "I once believed my curse was a punishment, but it was a lesson. It showed me that strength is nothing without gentleness, and that even a wolfless soul can carry the power to heal a king. The hall erupted in applause that rolled like thunder. Lyra bowed her head, humbled, though her heart swelled. That night, when the feast had ended and the torches burned low, Caelrin led her back to the tower balcony, the same place where their story had nearly ended. The moon hung full above them, painting the world in silver. The wind was warm, carrying the scent of wildflowers. Caelrin drew her close, his hands resting on her waist. "Do you remember the first time you stood here?" he asked quietly. "I remember the chains," she said. "And your eyes. One silver, one red. And now I see both. Gray, like the sky before dawn. Balance." He smiled, touching his forehead to hers. "You taught me that word. And you taught me that love isn't weakness." Their bond pulsed between them, a soft hum beneath their skin. The golden mark at her neck shimmered faintly, answering the steady beat of his heart. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You were the light that freed me, Lyra. But more than that, you were the mirror that showed me who I am. And you were the shadow that made me whole," she whispered. Below them, the citadel bells began to ring, slow, resonant, carrying across the valley. From the far edge of the city, the wolves answered with a single, unified howl. Not one of grief, but of reverence. It rolled across the mountains like a hymn. Lyra turned toward the sound, tears glinting in her eyes. "They sing for you." Caelrin shook his head.
No.
"For us." He knelt, pressing his lips to her stomach, whispering something only the child could hear. Then he rose and took her hands, his expression soft, content, unburdened. "Whatever happens next," he said, "we've already broken every chain." The moonlight caught in his eyes, and for a moment, Lyra saw them as they had once been, two broken souls bound by darkness. Now there was only warmth, only light. She smiled through her tears. "Then let's see what the dawn brings." He kissed her, slow, reverent, eternal. And as the first light of morning crested the horizon, bathing the citadel in gold, the curse that had haunted their world faded completely, not destroyed, but transformed, woven forever into the story of a king who was saved not by power, nor by destiny, but by a forgotten Omega's kiss. The years turned softly in Blackmere, like the pages of an old, beloved book. Gone were the banners of war and the iron stench of fear. In their place came the hum of harvests, laughter spilling from taverns, and the rhythmic clang of forges crafting not swords but plows, gates, and bells. The kingdom that had once been steeped in shadow now glittered with life. At the heart of it all stood the Luna Sanctum, the great sanctuary Lyra had built from the ruins of the old dungeons. Once a place of chains, it was now a refuge where Omegas, healers, and even broken alphas came seeking peace. The air smelled of herbs and fresh parchment, the walls painted with stories of wolves and moons entwined, legends rewritten by a queen who believed that empathy was as divine as strength. Lyra herself walked those halls each dawn. She no longer wore a crown of gold but a simple circlet of woven willow, a symbol of growth rather than rule. People bowed when she passed, but she always stopped to meet their eyes. She remembered every name, every wound she had once soothed, and every soul who'd called themselves unworthy. Her touch could still calm tremors of pain. But now, her power was no longer just empathy, it was harmony. She had learned to channel both light and shadow, to use even sorrow as a bridge toward healing. She taught that darkness, once understood, became another color in the soul's palette. Her son, Prince Corin, was 5 years old when the first snows of the new era fell. He had his father's eyes, storm gray flecked with silver, and his mother's quiet curiosity. He was fearless, though not reckless, and when he laughed, even the castle guards paused to smile. Caelrin adored him in the fierce, gentle way only a man who had lost everything could. The once cursed Alpha now spent his evenings teaching his son to read the constellations instead of battle tactics. "There," he would say, pointing to the stars above the citadel. That one's the wolf's path, the route your ancestors took when they followed the moon across the frozen plains. Corn would look up, eyes wide, his breath fogging the air. And the bright one next to it? That, Kaelrin would murmur, glancing at Lyra, who always listened nearby, is the heart star. The story says it appears only when a wolf finds his true home. Like you found Mama? Exactly like that. The kingdom prospered under the rule of the wolf and the moon, as the people called them. Where past kings had governed through fear, Kaelrin ruled through unity. His decrees were written not in threats, but in promises, laws of fairness, protection, and dignity for all ranks. It was not an age without conflict. Border tribes tested his peace. Old lords still grumbled, clinging to tradition like armor. But Kaelrin faced them with a calm authority that silenced opposition. Strength, he once told his council, is not how loud you can roar. It is how deeply others listen when you speak softly. And they listened, because they remembered the beast he had once been, and the man who had mastered it. Lyra, meanwhile, became legend among the priesthood of the goddess Alunira. They called her the living moon, claiming her kiss had not just freed Kaelrin but healed the divine balance between wolf and world. Pilgrims came from distant lands to glimpse her or touch the gates forged from her king's broken chains. But Lyra never sought worship. "Do not bow to me," she would tell them. "Bow to the part of yourselves that still believes love can mend what hate destroys." Her words became doctrine. Her teachings spread far beyond Blackmere. Neighboring packs began sending their children to learn at the Sanctum School of Hearts and Claws, where they studied not just combat and law but mercy and understanding. The world slowly reshaped itself in her image, quietly, like rivers carving stone. When the 10th anniversary of the curse's breaking arrived, the kingdom celebrated with a night of lanterns. Thousands of lights floated up from the valley floor, rising toward the citadel like stars returning to the heavens. The people sang, the same old melody reborn into something gentler, freer. Kaelrin and Lyra watched from the balcony, their son perched between them. He pointed at the glowing sky. "They look like souls." "They are," Lyra said softly. "Every light is someone's memory of hope." Kaelrin smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Do you still think of the tower as a cage?" "No," she said, leaning into him. "It's where I met you. Cages don't matter when love is what breaks them." He kissed her hair, whispering, "You broke far more than chains, my queen." Later, when the songs faded and the city slept, Lyra walked alone to the sanctuary gates. The moon was high, silvering the stone arch that bore the words from darkness, light. She placed her hand on the cold iron and closed her eyes. "I still feel it sometimes," she murmured, to the wind, to the goddess, to herself. "The darkness. It doesn't frighten me anymore. It reminds me that light without shadow has no depth." Behind her, Kaelrin's voice came low and warm. "You've turned even pain into wisdom." She turned, smiling. "And you've turned even power into kindness." He joined her by the gate. They stood together, watching the valley, the moonlight catching on the silver threads in his hair. "Do you ever wonder," he said, "what the historians will write of us?" Lyra tilted her head. "They'll say the king was cursed by shadow and saved by an Omega's kiss. And what will they leave out? That it wasn't the kiss alone," she said, her gaze softening. "It was the choice that came before it. The choice to see the man inside the monster." Kaelrin took her hand, pressing it to his heart. "Then let them remember that love was not the end of the story," he said. "It was the beginning." They stood in silence, two figures outlined by moonlight, king and queen, wolf and moon, shadow and light. Around them, the world they'd rebuilt thrived, pulsing with the life they had once feared was lost forever. Above, the heart star burned bright, and somewhere deep in the woods beyond Blackmere, a wolf howled, not in sorrow, but in song. They say the Alpha King was born of fire and shadow, and the Luna queen of silence and light. Together, they taught the world that even in darkness, love remembers how to find its way home. The story of Caelrin and Lyra passed from kingdom to kingdom, generation to generation, no longer a tale of monsters, but a hymn of mercy. A reminder that strength and gentleness, when bound together, could shape not only a man, not only a queen, but the very soul of the world. And in every century that followed, when storms rattled the mountains and wolves cried beneath the moon, their people whispered one eternal truth. Even the wildest curse bows to love. And so ends the tale of the Alpha King and the Forgotten Omega. A story not of power, but of mercy, not of conquest, but of healing. In a world where every curse is born from fear, perhaps love itself is the oldest kind of magic, the only spell strong enough to tame the beast within us all. If this story touched you, if you felt the light and shadow dance together in your heart, then join us again. Subscribe to the channel for more dark fantasy love tales, where monsters find redemption and broken souls learn how to love again. Until next time, remember, even the wildest curse bows to love.